House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
You have been in this field for more than 50 years. It's worth pointing out to our viewers, I think it's important to note you consider yourself to be apolitical, and you say that the tariff problem is a symptom of a much greater problem. What do you mean by that?
There's a financial problem. There's an imbalance problem. There are basically five big forces through history that drive everything. First, there's the money, credit, debt, economic cycle in which there's a building up of debt in a cyclical way that becomes too large, and we're going to have problems. We're going to have a government debt problem. Maybe we can get into this. The second big force through time is the internal conflict force. The left and the right, differences in wealth and values causing a conflict that we're seeing it changing our political order. So the first is changing our monetary order. The second is changing our political order internally. And then the third is the great world order, how countries deal with each other. When there's a rising power, challenging an existing power. And now we are going from multilateralism, which is largely an American world order type of thing, to a unilateral world order in which there's great conflict. And the other two factors all through history have been acts of nature, droughts, floods, and pandemics. And number four is technology changing. And how they are coming together are the main forces behind this.
Welcome back to Training Tuesday. And yeah, the Rob Maness Show is live again on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, financial uncertainty has all of us on pins and needles and thinking about what we can do about this. You know, these forces cause financial instability, but most of us want our assets, especially our retirement accounts, to be immune to the unpredictable whims of markets and global economic unrest and those kinds of things. But the big question is how to get that mission accomplished in a world of endless wars, internal unrest and divide, bank failures, and our nation's reckless spending causing a $37 trillion national debt crisis. Well, my guest today is Joseph Lombardi. He's the CEO of Iron Hawk Financial. Joseph's mission is both simple and profound. He aims to help you secure a financially stable future for your family or your business. Joseph, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thanks for having me on, Rob. Pleasure to be here, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. I like to do shows on Training Tuesday where I'm learning something, and hopefully the audience is learning something too. When I came across you and your books and your website and your company, I'm like, this is a guy I want to hear what he has to say. But first, introduce yourself to the audience a little bit more than what I just did.
Yeah, so I'm the owner and founder of Iron Hawk Financial. I've been in business for 22 years. I won 30 international business awards. I've been featured at International Business Times, Business Insider, Market Insider, The Daily Caller, the Marquis Who's Who, and the Congressional Library for 2023. I'm on the cover of many magazines like the Who's Who in Building and Construction. I also made the prestigious Top 40 Under 40 in the country for finance. I've written and published 3 books that are all on Amazon: Being Your Own Bank, There's a Better Way Than a 401k, Long-Term Care Without Long-Term Pain, A+ rated on the Better Business Bureau, 5-star rated on Google, 0 complaints, thousands of clients, billions of dollars of protection and rollovers in my strategy. And basically what I do is I utilize what the ultra wealthy people do. I've worked in Wall Street, I've worked with celebrities, I've worked with sports athletes, And I realized that they don't do what the average American does. They don't own any 401ks, any IRAs, any SEP Simples pension, deferred comp, 457, 529s, Chet's Rydell's, 403bs. They don't own any of that. That is for the so-called peasants. So what they do is they use their own IRS code, right? Because 401k is an IRS code. So they use their IRS code called 7702. Now that code allows people, super wealthy, billionaires to people that make 20 bucks an hour, can utilize this to have the ability to grow money tax-free. They can lean the money out like they were like Elon Musk. They can have higher returns. Historically, over the last 20 years, is about 400% more net returns than the 401k or the SP in the SP 500. It's sue-proof, divorce-proof in most states, non-disclosable on the FAFSA form or secondary form, doesn't disqualify your children from grants, scholarships, low-interest student loans, or financial aid. All three of my children have this plan right when they were born. And it basically just keeps growing and growing. You're guaranteed not to lose because you don't own any asset. You don't own Apple stock. You own an option contract call on Apple stock. So not owning the asset and owning a bet on the asset is how these millionaires and billionaires are able to get way higher returns than everybody else, but literally lose nothing when the market drops.
Wow. 7702?
That's correct.
So, you mentioned your 3 books, and we'll talk about all of those during the show. But you didn't just jump into this, right? I mean, did something inspire you to get into this business?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was supposed to be a contractor. My dad owned JV Lombardi Builders. When I was 4, my parents got divorced. Moved from Boca Raton, Florida up to Trumbull, Connecticut with nothing, a blanket, a TV, $500 in a van, live in an attic with no running water, ate noodles and eggs with ketchup, had a hamburger helper about the hamburger meat. Lived extreme impoverished. But my grandmother gave my dad a loan back in the mid to late 90s, where if you had a hammer and a truck, you're making 6 figures a year. That was the housing boom. And my grandmother pulled equity out of her home, gave it to my dad to grow his business, and then he became a millionaire. He hired a bunch of people, started growing, got into very wealthy towns like Greenwich and Westport, worked with people like Paul Newman, the CEO of Coca-Cola, CEO of NFL at the time, worked on his property. And so then we went from very impoverished to like very rich. And then within a couple of years, he falls off a ladder, a bone in his foot disintegrated. He loses a $27 million construction company. So
Wow.
What I realized is like a lot of people don't have a foundation, right? So I started my business when I was 19 years old, chasing trucks on the highway. They used to call me the dog because I would drive in the left lane fast. And as soon as I saw like ABC Electric, 123 Plumbing, there's always a cell phone number underneath it, or like a 1-800 number. I didn't call those, but I looked for the cell phones. And I'd call them up, be like, hey, purpose of my call, my dad was JV Lombardi Builders. He fell 3 stories off a ladder, lost everything. Can I get off the next exit, buy you a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, make sure it doesn't happen to you and your family? And believe it or not, a lot of contractors are like, sure. So I bought a lot of bagels and bacon, egg, and cheeses and large, coffees over a few years to really grow my network and my client base because I was young, so I couldn't really go after wealthy people. So I just started selling insurance. And then from there, I moved on, got my securities license, 6, 63, 65, 7. And then shortly after that, my mom dies, 52 years old, cirrhosis of liver, alcoholism, no life insurance. And I was like, oh, great. And then about 2 years after that, my grandfather dies, my uncle dies in the same year. And then a month later, my grandmother, who just lost her husband and her son, has a stroke from all the stress. And then that led to dementia. And as you know, dementia doesn't kill you. So after she inherited $4.2 million, my grandfather's estate, Lombardi Masonry, out of Trumbull, Connecticut, that was all stolen by Ludlow Nursing Home in Fairfield, across from Sacred Heart University. $4.2 million, gone. 7 years. So I realized, I'm like, wow, my family busted their butt. They did the right thing, worked hard, raised families, owned their own houses, accumulated millions in the 90s, which is a lot more money than today. And they had nothing to show for it. And I said, how many other people out there have a business, real estate, stocks, a crypto account, retirement accounts, but they have no permanent life insurance, no long-term care, no disability, and more importantly, no tax-free assets. And I'm like, all these Americans were taught in economics, don't put all eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
And all these Americans are putting all their eggs in one basket. If you're like a contractor, all your money's in real estate, right? If you're a W-2 employee, all your money's in your 401k, right? If you're a white collar business owner, all your money's in a SEP, simplified employer pension. So I realized that, like, why are they doing this? Why aren't they diversifying their taxation, their liquidity, their market exposure? And why are they not building a solid financial foundation? Because most of the time, those same people making all that money are the breadwinners. They have a spouse that depends on their income. They have children that depend on their income. And when something happens out of their control, they lose everything. And I lived it. And it's really hard when you go through an emotional pain, a mental pain, a spiritual pain, and then you see your family going through a physical pain, and you personally have to go through a financial pain. It really sucks. So I try to protect people from that, and I've been doing that for 22 years.
Yeah, on your website, it talks about your main goal is to protect people's assets, protect their livelihood, and those kind of things. But your primary product is life insurance. Before we get to this first break, how does that basically work in a basic sense before we dive into anything too complex?
Helicopter view, the IRS code 7702 is embedded in a permanent death benefit product. So if the death benefit's legally tax-free, all the money under the wrapper of the policy is all legally tax-free. So it allows my clients to accumulate money by being their own bank, earn higher returns than they are in their 401k, pay $0 in taxes, and the most important thing is they have all the benefits, but they can lean the money out. So quick example, you have $100,000 in there, you pull $90,000 out to finance a vehicle, you still earn interest on $100,000. So when the 10% return comes in, instead of you earning 10% of the 10,000 left, which would be $1,000, you earn 10% of the 100,000 that's in there, which would be $10,000 on money that's not there. It's called non-direct recognition. And so when people understand this, which is not taught in schools, it's not advertised mainstream because it's illegal, not allowed to. You think you've seen a Super Bowl commercial on this. You're talking about $1 trillion industry. But once people realize it's real, it's not some fugazi scam. It's been around hundreds of years, backed by A-plus, mutual companies that survived the Civil War, World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II. And that millionaires use it. They're like, I want it.
So where does the insurance policy come from?
So you meet with somebody who knows what they're doing, because you can get hurt in this strategy. It has to be built the right way, the right carrier, the right riders, the right company. And so you would meet with somebody like me who has a long period of time. They go through underwriting, make sure you're insurable. You then can set up a plan. You dictate the death benefit and the long-term care benefits, and then that'll dictate your premium or your contributions. And then what you do is you have to overfund it, right? You don't want to minimum fund these things because they can blow up. So you have to overfund it. So you want to reduce the benefits while you're younger. So then let them compound, because they will grow every year with the cash. And that keeps your cost of insurance down. It keeps the commission somebody like me makes on the deal down. And more of the money that you're contributing goes into the sub account, which is the call options, long options account.
So every time you talk, it leads me to more questions, Joe.
It's fun.
What does it mean? You got about a minute before the break there. So explain that reduce your benefits early and grow them to where it's late. Because like when I was in my 30s, late 30s, I needed a $600,000 life insurance policy, one that I shouldn't really need now. So
Great.
Explain that real quick before we go to the break.
So what people think is they think two things, which are a fallacy. The number one, they think, oh, I'm going to be making less money in retirement, so let me defer my money, which is true. Not true. I've been doing this 22 years. Nobody retires and says, let me live in poverty, sell my house, sell my car, and go live in a box. Right. So that dream they sold you is BS. The second fallacy is, oh, I'm older, I don't need life insurance. Well, I'll tell you what, 22 years, I meet more people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that wish they had more life insurance to leave to their grandchildren, to set up college funds for them, to take care of a charity that they believe in based on maybe their husband died of ALS or Parkinson's and they want to contribute to help the cause. More people in their 80s want to leave a legacy more so than people in their 40s, right? So you have to understand that you change. And as you get older, that fallacy of, oh, I'm old, I don't need life insurance, my kids are grown, my mortgage is paid for, I don't need life insurance. It's like you need life insurance the most because you're going to have your biggest expense, which is long-term care. And you can accelerate your death benefit while you're still alive because they're guaranteed to die. So the insurance company's going to give you that money up front. So that's a big fallacy that people have.
All right. Well, let's go to the commercial break. When we come back, it's a very great place to leave it because I want to talk about one of your 3 books, and that's the long-term care, long-term plan book. So it fits right in there. We'll be right back with Joseph Lombardi of Iron Hawk Financial. It's a fascinating subject. Get people in here.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Matt, I don't know. I've been listening to it all day. You heard my rant. What's your take on everything?
You know, I think the Elon-Donald Trump breakup, if that's what this wasn't completely unpredictable. But let me just say this. I'm a lifelong Republican. I run a pretty important conservative group. I realized long ago as a Republican, the idea that the Republicans, there are enough Republicans in this country to get elected to the presidency is a myth. Conservatives are the largest bloc, and we're still a minority. It takes a coalition, and that's what I like to refer to this as. We need MAGA. We need independents. We need all these Democrats who hate woke, but we're willing to give Donald Trump a try. And Elon Musk is a big piece of that. And so I think what we have to all understand is that when it comes to questions like this tax bill, which is critical, we don't pass this tax bill, we are going to have an economic crisis on our hands. But look, I would like to spend so much less than most Republicans want to spend. I totally am sympathetic to where Elon Musk and others are coming on the spending. But remember, we have I can put up the House majority. It's on a single hand. And it's a slender majority that the speaker has. And in part of that are California and New York moderates. And so you have to deal with the reality of dealing with this coalition. And nobody should be confused. Yes, this bill could be greatly confused, but at the end of the day, we have to get these Trump tax cuts passed or we have an economic problem. By the way, along with those tax cuts, we're going to finish that wall. We're going to get all the border security we need to kick these people out of our country who came here illegally. So to me, the equities are on one side. We ought to pass this bill.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday here on Worldview Tube, and my guest today is the CEO and founder of Iron Hawk Financial, Joseph Lombardi, and he's got a unique way of addressing crisis. And I wanted to show that little clip there because Matt Schlapp talks a little bit about the political crisis, but really dives into the economic or potential financial crisis that a lot of families are going to have if we don't address the situation ourselves. And that's what Joe Lombardi gives you the ability to do. Joe, welcome back to the show. One of your 3 books, we talked about it briefly before the break, long-term care, long-term plan. And you mentioned that long-term care is the biggest expense a person's going to have, and it comes late in life. So you have to have life insurance, a lot of life insurance late in life. Talk about that book and why you wrote it and what the particulars are that you tell people in there.
So I wrote that book because I used to sell what's called standalone long-term care policies. That was when I was at Barnum Financial Group and I was at MetLife. Those plans, they start off very inexpensive in your 40s, 50s. And then when you start getting older, the costs get up a lot. It's like a huge bell curve up. And so how those were designed is the insurance companies priced, let's say, 4% of people canceling those policies, right? And what ended up happening is that nobody canceled them. So all the costs that they started lower, more money was being taken from the pool, because like that was the original long-term care strategy, was pool it with a bunch of other people, and a lot of people will die. They will lapse their policy, and then all the money they put in stays in the pot for you if you stay in, right? But what happened is not all the people died and not a lot of people canceled it. So there was more money, and then we had inflation. So there was more money that was coming out of the pool. So they have to keep raising the rates. So it gets to the point where when you're in your 70s, you're negotiating with the insurance company to be like, hey, instead of my premium going to $3,000 a month, which is more than my rent or my mortgage, I can't afford that. I started at $250 a month. Now it's $3,000 a month. So what can I do? The insurance companies look in their chops. Oh, let's reduce your benefits. So now you started with a good long-term care policy, let's say $300 a day. And then by the time you can afford, when you're in your late 70s, early 80s, what you can afford is like, $40 a day for $300 a month. And it's like, what is that going to do? Nothing. So those policies exploded. And I realized that, like, without me knowing, I was hurting more people than I was helping, because people just couldn't afford these things. They lowered their benefits. Then when they needed care, it wasn't anywhere near what they needed, they originally signed up for. So I said, there's got to be a better way, right? So I talked to a couple of very wealthy people, because I worked in Wall Street and I worked in Hanover Square in Manhattan for a company called NFM. And so I realized that, like, these newer policies, right, like phones and TVs, they're a tangible asset, right? They change every year, and for the better, because there's competition. So now the insurance companies, what they allow you to do is they say, okay, if you're guaranteed to die, we're going to accelerate your death benefit. It's called accelerated death benefit rider, or called a chronic illness rider. And it's if you can't do 2 of the 6 adult daily living activities, which is clothing yourself, feeding yourself, driving yourself, cognitive, bathing yourself, the policy will kick in, right? So you get a letter from the doctor, blah, blah, blah. So now what the insurance companies do is they'll allow you a maximum of $30,000 a month, tax-free, as an acceleration of your death benefit. So now you don't have to be like what my grandmother did, is sell high-taxed, high-cost assets. What's a high-tax, high-cost asset? Well, that would be like a rental property, right? Let's say you needed care and you have $500,000 rental property. Well, if you cash that rental property in, do you get $500,000? No, nowhere close. You have to sell it, pay a realtor 7%. There's 35 grand gone. You have 465. Then you have to pay income taxes on that 465 minus your principals. Call that like another 120 grand. So it's almost like for every dollar you need from your assets, it actually costs you $2. So using the life insurance as a long-term care strategy, what it does is when you need $1, you're getting $1. You're cashing out or leaning $1 of your death benefit. So this strategy saves clients hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost. It makes clients hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit, and it saves clients hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. And while they are in retirement, or even before retirement, there's no 59.5-year rule. So I have clients in their 30s that are using this to buy rental properties and earn 2 streams of income on $1. But from a standpoint of long-term care, while you're in retirement, you can use it to fund your big expenses, your cars, your vacations. And then what you do is you buy a car, right? You pay a monthly fee, you pay yourself back. And if the interest rate, it's averaging 14% rate of return over the last 15 and 20 years documented. And if it has a 5% loan rate, there's a 9% negative rate of return. Well, this is something Americans never heard of, a negative rate of return. So meaning you're earning 9% on the loan. So if you take $100,000 out, instead of you paying Ford of America, $7,000, $9,000, $12,000 a year, you're making historically $9,000 a year. So in the matter of 72 months, an average car note, you can get the vehicle for free. So how do you get it for free? Well, if I save 35 grand in interest on a $100,000 loan at 72 months at 11% or 9%, and I made 9 times 6, $54,000 in profit, 54 plus 45, boom, I got the $100,000 car for free. So it's a strategy that the ultra wealthy use on a way bigger scale, right? They don't use it to finance cars; they use it to finance, skyscrapers in Chicago. Banks lend it. That's how banks lend money, is bank-owned life insurance. Google it. How do banks lend money after hours? They do it inside of life insurance. So if you understand, this is a trillion with a T, trillion-dollar industry that the average American doesn't know exists. Who's funding it? The ultra wealthy are. So why not do what the billionaires are doing instead of doing what your broke neighbor's doing?
Well, isn't the big question is the billionaires can put large sums of money in this thing up front, right? I mean, most people can't do that.
Well, you don't have to do the upfront. I mean, the lump sum is cool, but there's something called a MEC, a modified endowment contract. So the government said, hey, client, you can't put $1 million in this thing and buy $100,000 of death benefit. That voids the risk of it. You're just now evading taxes. So there's something based on your age, your sex, your health rating, and your death benefit dictate your premium. On the flip side, your age, your sex, health rating, and your premium dictate your death benefit. So we build it specifically individually for each of our clients to make sure it's covering all the risks, their risk tolerance, their time horizon, their budget, make sure they don't have a lot of high interest debt. Because if you have high interest debt at 29.99, why would you put in my strategy where you're only earning 14? I can't guarantee it 29.99. You're better off using those dollars to pay off debt. So we have debt relationships. Ironhawk Financial has with companies like CashMap, Debt Shredder, that have long histories of positive, reviews and helping people. So at the end of the day, everyone needs what we offer. Just nobody wants to make it a priority until it's too late.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So say I've got a mortgage. I'm 64 years old. It's about a $500,000 mortgage balance and all that. Got about, I don't know, $850,000 to $1 million in equity on top of that in the property and those kind of things. What do you tell me about this product at that point in my life to get me to take you up on it?
So what I tell my clients is you have to make more money on the money that you're lending, investing, than the money that you're borrowing or loaning. So if you're paying, it all depends on your interest rate. If that house at 3%, don't overpay that house. It makes absolutely no sense. And meet with my buddy Dennis Williams owns CashMap, because he'll teach you how to pay that house off about 30% sooner without paying $1 extra. It's just about when you pay your bills, and that's a whole nother podcast. But so as long as your interest rate isn't 15%, which it's hard to find an interest rate that high on a secure asset, like even a car that's kind of high, but it's still a lot of people pay that. Interest rates low, take your extra dollars, overfund an IUL. But what the coolest strategy to do for my clients, like I'll give you an example. I had a client that came to me referred by his state attorney at $2.7 million in a David Lerner retirement account, IRA. He was never going to need it. He was going to leave it to both his sons. And I said, well, and he was worth about 15, 20 million, right? So I said, you're going to have an estate tax issue. Anything over worth 14 million, you're going to have a estate tax issue. So instead of leaving that 2.7 million, that's going to go through estate taxes, 50%, and ordinary income taxes to his children at 50%, leaving roughly 800,000. I said, why don't we take the 2.7, put it in an income annuity? So why would I do that? The income annuities right now, interest rates are high, are paying out anywhere between 7 and 9%, guaranteed. Oh, wow. Every year till you die. They're going to pay you that money, no matter what. The account value can go to zero, still paying you that money till you die. But historically, the account value is holding its own. So it's earning historically more than the 7 and 9%. So you pull out the 7 and 9%, which in this example was $212,000, right? We paid the tax on it. We took the other 180,000, we put it into a second to die life insurance policy. So what I did there is I just created a $12 million tax-free death benefit, because both spouses are guaranteed to die. Put it in an irrevocable life insurance trust, just the death benefit, no other assets, just the death benefit policy is now in the trust. So if it's an irrevocable, it avoids estate taxes. And then life insurance avoids ordinary income taxes to both of his sons. So now I just turned a $800,000 asset into a $12 million asset, guaranteed to be paid out to his children upon death, because the policy annuity is guaranteed to be paid for, which means the death benefit, the death insurance policy is guaranteed to be paid for, right? That's option one as a legacy.
Yeah. Well, we got to take another break. We got to take another commercial break, Joe. When we come back, I want to continue this discussion because I think it's very important for folks to hear this type of innovative approach to protecting yourself. Because really, I mean, look at what's going on. Just the few clips that you've shown so far. You're going to see another one here shortly of the uncertainty that's out there in the financial world and the economic world for the average American. I'll be right back with Joseph Lombardi, Iron Hawk Financial.
I know everyone involved. I know I'm telling the truth. I have no weird motive here at all. I don't hate Israel. I'm not.
Plus, you know the players, and you went to, and you know the Iraq situation.
This isn't a regime change effort, and why not just say that? But you're a Holocaust denier for saying that. Well, stop. Let's have a rational conversation about what our aims are here. And maybe you can convince me that we need to support a regime change war in Iran. Tell me how that plays out in a country of 90 million people. Have you thought it through? Do you even care? And the answer is no. We have a economic and political and demographic crisis in Europe because of U.S.-backed, Israel-backed
Syria
wars in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That's what's destroyed Europe, where my ancestors came from. And I spent a lot of time there, and I love.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're talking with the CEO and founder of Iron Hawk Financial about his methodology that he's written 3 books about to help people protect themselves through life insurance and other particular products. Joseph Lombardi's my guest today, the CEO of Iron Hawk. And Joseph, I just wanted to show that little clip because, you know, we're affected, our economy is affected by externals. And one of the things that everybody knows about today is all these millions of illegals that are now in our country. And Carlson there, Tucker was talking about what's happened to Europe. We've seen it happen. They're in an economic crisis because of that situation where all these illegals were brought in and changed the face of their nations. And that's what is happening before our very eyes here in the United States of America. So it's very important. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show with you, was to give people other options and other points of view and other products that can help them protect their assets. We were talking for the break about how you do that. Please go ahead with what you were saying.
Yeah, so I mean, if you do what everybody else does and expect different results than everybody else, it's a definition of insanity, right? And there's so many risks you have to deal with, especially when you're hitting retirement. You have to deal with risks of, what if taxes go up? As you said, which I was very impressed, we owe $37 trillion, right? And the big, beautiful bill is going to push up $40 trillion. Taxes, highest marginally speaking, in 1980s were 70%. In the 1960s were 92%. We're in the second lowest federal tax bracket since the end of World War I, the Great Depression, and the beginning of World War II. So when you understand, you look at numbers, right? Because men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. And when you look at them and you say, hey, does history guarantee to repeat? No, but history rhymes. So when you look at where were taxes before World War I? They were 7.5% federal. Where were they after 4 years into World War I? You know where they were? 75%.
Wow.
Then they dropped after we won. And then where were they before World War II? They were 25%. Well, where were they 48 months after World War II? 85%. So then you look at if you go to Google, type in 100-year highest marginal tax bracket picture, it'll bring you up by Statistica, a picture on this. And I'm looking at it, and you remember they shot a missile, right? Right before Trump took office, missile was shot into Russia, right? The neocons were last ditch attempt to get World War III so they can raise taxes from 35, 39.6 to about 80. And they have to do that to address the $37 trillion debt. So if you have to ask yourself, if all my assets, my home, my business, my retirement account, my stock account, my crypto account is all taxable, and I have really no tax-free assets besides maybe some of your listeners have a small IRA or they have some cash or gold and silver, right? That's about all I find in the conservative, patriot, Christian market that I'm in. And so what I found is that we have the tax risk to worry about. Then we have inflation. If inflation's going at 7.2%, right? Everyone heard of the rule of 72, whether you remember it or not. The rule of 72 means if you divide it by 10, right, if you want your money to double in 10 years, at 7.2%, your money's going to double. And if it averages 10%, in 7.2 years, your money's going to double. It's the rule of 72, and you can divide any numbers within that. So if we know inflation's running right around 7, that means our purchasing power of our dollars 10 years from now is going to be 50%. So that logic of, oh, I'm going to be making the most money I ever made while I'm accumulating. And then when I hit retirement, I'm going to be just living in extreme poverty. And then I'm going to be living in super extreme poverty because now I have to live on half of the money that I had 10 years ago. Even though I have the same dollars, they don't buy the same amount of goods and services, right? So then you take a look at what have I done if I'm a 50, 60-year-old American. I've invested in a 401k or IRA where over half of my money is stolen by Wall Street. Did you know that? What's 1.5%? Simple, right? If it was just a flat 1.5% fee, which it's not, it's compounding. But if it's just a flat 1.5% fee, what's 1.5 times 30? That would be 45. If it was a simple cost, a 12B1 fee, Class A share fund fee, money manager fee, annual account fee, mutual fund expense fee, if that was half, it was simple, it'd be a little under half. But if it's 1.5% of the value of my account, that's the principal and the interest. What do you think you put away 30 years ago in your 401k, right? Maybe $100 a month, right? Which was a lot of money back then, right? Now your retirement grows to $1 million. What's 1.5% of $1 million? That would be $15,000 a year in fees, 15 grand that Wall Street's stealing from you. So that would have wiped out your first 4 or 5 years of contribution, your 30th year, just in fees. But this is the math that they don't teach you, right? And so if I'm losing over half my money on the way up in fees to Wall Street, which is the second arm of the IRS, that's what I call Wall Street, and then I have to take distributions out, I have to pay federal tax, state tax, FICA, Medicare, unemployment, Social Security tax, I'm losing half my money on the way out. Doesn't that mean I have access to less than a quarter of my total net account over 30 years? Why would I sign up for that? When the millionaires and billionaires, when they accumulate, how much goes towards cost of fees? Nothing. Zero. There's cost of insurance, which you need anyway. While you're building, you have children, you have a mortgage, you have a spouse, you have a business. You need that to have that fee, right? So
Right.
why not build it into a strategy that's going to last forever? Why are you going to rent your retirement or your life insurance or your disability or your long-term care when you own your house, you own your business, you own your car? Why are you going to rent that and make the insurance companies 96% of their revenue, because they pay out nothing if you don't die? They pay out nothing if you don't get disabled. They pay out nothing if you drop dead of a heart attack and don't need long-term care. And you've given them hundreds of thousands of dollars over your life. So don't do that.
Yeah.
Own it. So no matter what happens, right? If I live long, I have a tax-free pension that I can use in retirement. Well, if I die early, there's a tax-free benefit to the people I love to protect them financially. And if I get disabled, they're going to cut you a check for up to $1.5 million in cash, tax-free. And then if I need long-term care, they're going to give you up to $360,000 a year in cash to keep you home and not be thrown in a 10 by 10 cell, jail cell, known as a nursing home with a stranger.
Wow. It's it could make all the difference in the world. So these policies, the life insurance policies, put them for the folks, put them in the terms of what most people think about life insurance. It's either term life or whole life. I think the average person probably thinks that way. What's the difference? Oh, folks, looks like we've lost our guest there for just a second, and we'll see if we can get him back. Producer Reagan, if you can work that for us, we'd appreciate it. So, folks, Ironhawk Financial, ironhawkfinancial.com is their website. He's got a small X account, Ironhawk Fin, Fin, very small X account, really hasn't tweeted. So if you want to go follow him, he may be beginning to start that. Doesn't look like he's been on social media much. And we will see if we can get him back. The opening video of this segment was Tucker Carlson when he was being interviewed by Steve Bannon just 24 hours ago. He was talking about the risk of regime change is what Tucker was talking about there. And that risk is primarily economic because of all of and the example he used was Europe. The wars that the United States supported, most of them in the Middle East, generated the refugees that ended up going to Europe. That's why I wanted to show that clip, because it's created an economic crisis for Europe because of the shift in the type of population and the type of values that population has. That's a dramatically high risk that all of us should be thinking about, and our decision makers need to be thinking about that from that perspective of what the impact is on our economy. I wish we'd have had a decision maker like Donald Trump during the last 4 years, because Joe Biden brought in over 10 million illegals, and we don't even know who half of these people are. Most of them weren't vetted. Many of them were from the Middle East and Asia, People's Republic of China. Well, it looks like Joe's back with us. Joe, you were discussing right at that point where you broke up. You were discussing how you don't have to pay fees to Wall Street. You don't have to pay these taxes if you look into these types of products. Do a little quick review real quick before we go to the last segment, if you can, and then we'll have some questions from the audience when we go to the last segment. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so sorry, they're doing construction on one of my office buildings. So when you take a look at taxes, you take a look at interest rates, you take a look at how the system is built. It's built to enslave you financially. The same educational systems are owned by the government. They brainwash you to invest with the government. The government is not your friend. As you see, you don't take a jab, they're going to throw you in jail or make you lose your job. If the FBI lets you into the White House for a little drill, they'll put you in jail for 10 years for the J6.
That's right.
So you have to understand the government is not your friend. So why are you investing all your money with your government, making them a ton of money? They're not responsible. They're not spending it on you. They're not making sure the school systems and the roads and the education is all good because we're the 27th in math, but yet we spend the #1 amount of money out of all countries. Make that make sense. So why would you invest with the government? And most of the time, the answer is, I didn't know another way, because you're not legally allowed to advertise on a mass scale. So I have to do podcasts. I have my own radio show, Money Talk with Ironhawk on Apple Podcasts. I have to do all these things to get the information out. And I pray to God I don't die of a heart attack, a Clinton-induced heart attack.
Well, we got to take our last commercial break. When we come back, though, I've got several hands up in the live audience. They've been listening. They want to ask you some questions. That'll help do a little bit of that non-advertising information.
Awesome.
We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Sir, we believe that digital assets belong in the private sector. And my personal view is that having a central bank digital currency is a sign of weakness, not strength, because really the reason, if there is a reserve, say a reserve manager or a foreign central bank holds US dollars, then there is a wide variety of US assets they can invest in. You would create a central bank digital currency just for ease of use because there are no good choices for underlying assets.
And so you're saying you would not be in favor of the Federal Reserve issuing such a currency?
No, sir.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're doing financial and economic training today, folks. And my guest today is Joseph Lombardi, the founder and CEO of Ironhawk Financial at ironhawkfinancial.com. You can find him there. And he's got a fascinating perspective and offers a way to protect yourself from high taxes, from economic and financial uncertainty. I mean, just the question of the centralized bank digital currency inserts uncertainty into the financial system that you can protect yourself from. And Joe, we've got some questions from our live audience. Let's go ahead and take a few of those before we get too far along in this segment. Go ahead, Shell is our host over there.
Yes, sir. We have a question from the live audience. They want to know what happens when the company that owns your life insurance goes under due to a wave of people dying from experimental vaccines or weight loss drugs?
Great question. So we went through COVID and zero insurance companies failed. There's something called reinsurance, where all insurance companies have to take a percentage of their profits and put it into a central fund. That fund has been used, I think, twice in the last 100 years. One was 2008 and one was COVID. And banks were totally fine. You're talking about an institution that survived the Civil War, World War I. How many people died in the Civil War? World War I. How many Americans died in World War I? World War II. Even more Americans died. And these companies are totally fine. There's a underwriting that they go through. So they don't bring in and allow just anybody in. So if you have felonies, DUIs, you are a drug addict, your liver enzymes are through the roof because you're an alcoholic. These are things they're not going to allow you in. So this is something you try to do when you're younger. Well, what if I'm 70 or 80? I have a client. I had to just put in an 83-year-old. The cutoff age is usually 85 and 90 for most insurance. So when you understand that the safety of your money is safer in a bank than a bank, because banks have failed. Right? Cash has been stolen. Gold and silver has been stolen from people's houses. People have died, never told their beneficiaries where their gold and silver is, and it's still buried in the house, and the house was sold. And so there's some houses, probably a lot of them, that have stashes of tons of value of gold and silver somewhere in the floorboard or in the mantle above the fireplace. So this is the safest place to put your money, period.
All right, people, you better be darn sure before you start ripping the floorboards and the drywall and the ceilings out of your houses looking for the gold. But that's a great answer, Joe. Let's take another question. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Brian, sir.
Well, I thank you. Two quick questions. This would have a crippling effect on brokers in the securities business, in my opinion. Maybe you can help explain that to me a little bit, or maybe it won't. And concerning Iran and the major things going on there, what's to say that putting pressure on them to alleviate some of the the people there that were causing complications, so alleviating some of the complications, essentially removing their smartest people, would we assume that they would incorporate AI in the place of non-cooperative people? Thank you for yeah.
So to answer your first question, in regards to how this affects stockbrokers, I'm not sympathetic to stockbrokers. I worked in Wall Street. It's very demonic. You've seen The Wolf of Wall Street. That's Sesame Street compared to the stuff that I've seen in Wall Street. So you have to understand that the stockbrokers that are sucking away your assets, whether the market goes up, they're stealing money from you. If the market goes down, they're stealing money from you. They're training their agents. If the market goes up, great job, Joe. Call all your clients and say the market's up 20%. If the market goes down, call all your clients, tell them it's a great time to buy. Great job, Joe. All while never buying anything, selling anything. You're in a target fund. You're in large cap blue chip equities that are averaging 4 to 7%. Who cares, right? So from a standpoint, the stockbrokers should lose. There shouldn't be so many of them sucking away and leeching away of good Christians' retirement accounts by providing minimal to none value in exchange for it. In regards to Iran, the only reason why we're in Iran is because the only reason why we're always in the Middle East is the current administration we are toppling or insurrecting January 6th style is because either they're not following our direction, they're not taking the US dollar. So the Federal Reserve is the one that's in charge of most of the killings in the Middle East, believe it or not, because the Federal Reserve wants their currency to be used. So if they're not taking the US dollar, that's less money that these countries are earning and the Federal Reserve is earning. So a lot of what they're telling you is a lie. In regard to AI, AI is coming. It's coming. Just like we thought CD, discs, when we used to have a Blockbuster card. Yes, I'm that old. I had one. The new generation is coming. There's nothing we can do about it. There's going to be pros and cons, right? But AI is something where it's going to be leveraged to make people that use it very wealthy quickly, and then it's going to take over everything. And I don't see a way where my children, I have 3 of them, or my grandchildren, which I hope I have a lot more than 3, can live in a world where AI is not going to affect them. And I hope it's positively, but we have no idea.
Joe, can you already see or people in your business projecting how AI might be used in a positive manner and be regulated so that it can't be used in a negative manner or mitigate negative use of it? You guys looked at that yet?
In a positive manner, I'm using it now, right? I have AI on my LinkedIn. I send out 25 messages a day to CEOs, other very wealthy people to get on my team's calendar and my calendar. It sends out a generic message 25 times a day, responds to them. And then if they're interested, I get a notification, right? I'm using AI in the sense of Facebook ads, trying to use AI to respond to text messages to people that fill out my Facebook ads and stuff like that. AI is used for life insurance. So let's say a company declines a client. We have software that'll put them through all 200 insurance companies. So 47-year-old male, 100 pounds overweight, diabetes, high blood pressure. 2 meds. We'll put that in the software, and they'll say, New York Life won't take you, but Mass Mutual will take you at this rating, or no carriers will take you. So then we know to use the spouse, which I do a lot of cross insured for cash growth banks. So AI is something that's used now, and I think whoever uses it the most, while it's not prevalent, is going to make the most money. And if you're too late to the AI revolution, you're not going to make any money.
Yeah. We got one more question from the live audience. Let's go ahead and take that. Go ahead, Shell.
Yes, we have Brian, sir.
Just my apology, a quick follow-up question on that.
The financial show, Brian?
I'm sorry. Say again.
The topic is finance, sir.
Yes, absolutely about that. So when it comes to closing costs, what
looks like we lost him, Shell.
Hey, it wasn't me this time.
No, it wasn't you this time. I don't even know enough to know an educated guess about closing costs, but it's probably something to do with some type of real estate transaction, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not a mortgage broker or a real estate agent.
Oh, he's back. He's back with us. Brian, can you go ahead with your question about closing costs?
Well, I was just basically going to ask. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me okay. But closing costs and end of mile. So what basically anything that revolves in closing costs, from your death to selling your financial home to selling but the closing costs and demand behind that. What's to stop them from tacking on more? Like, because AI is coming in and that would take over many types of works, concerning closing costs and how people can draw up bills, etc. What's to keep them from tacking on more fees, more charges on the end of that? I thought things were supposed to be getting cheaper.
I think we got the question now. Go ahead, Joe. Anything to add to that?
Well, when you die, your house has cost basis, and then if you have a really good accountant, you can claim a lot of updates. Updates that should have been done to the house, which are write-off. So most of the time, if you're not inheriting a house and paying little to no capital gains, you have a very poor accountant, and you may want to get a new one. And the last thing I want to say, I know we're running out of time, is any of your listeners, if they're interested in all of my books, articles, magazines, YouTube video, website, my radio show link, just send an email to Joe@Ironhawk Financial. I've never charged a client $1 in 20 years, never lost a client $1 in 20 years. You're interested in meeting with, one of my Ironhawk reps, or myself, or my sister, who's the COO, just write an email, Joe@Ironhawk, said, hey, I heard you on Rob's show. I'm interested in the information, and I will send you everything. There's no obligation. You don't get on any type of tracking email list, because I know a lot of people have the Proton email, so do I.
Yeah.
So, it's very safe. And if you're interested in getting that information, feel free to write an email.
Well, thank you, Joe. We appreciate it, man. Good luck with that. Joseph Lombardi of Ironhawk Financials. It's been a great show today, and thank you so much for your time. Tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday. Brandon Strzok is my guest. It's going to be fire, folks. I'll see you then.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brand.